All right, guys, welcome to this new podcast I am releasing. My name is Cameron Aunkst. This is called the You Need You podcast. And essentially, I wanted to create a platform where I could come and study all the things I want to study and actually need to study for school, but also release the information to the public. And while I was thinking about doing that in kind of a more of a solo podcast where I could go through PowerPoints and stuff, and I might do that in the future, as I started to think about this idea, it kind of snowballed into a lot of me knowing a lot of people that are very interested and passionate about the subject of mental health. And today's guest is my very own father, Ron Aunkst. We're going to be talking about specifically forest therapy today. It's a unique, interesting style of therapy that a lot of people undergo, but maybe not so much in everyday America. So he does this a lot, and I want to introduce him here in a second. But before we get started, I just wanted to preface this with I asked Google, I was like, hey, Google, how does nature tie into mental health? And essentially, Google's AI, because the response is now an AI response, says it has significant impact on mental health, reducing stress, anxiety, and depression while promoting feelings of calmness, happiness, and improved overall well being. And the University of Michigan has actually done a study where they had students walk through an arboretum, which I didn't know what that was, but that's a botanical garden full of trees. And then they had a bunch of students also walk through an urban environment. And afterwards, the students who had walked through the garden of trees felt had a happier mood and had a better working memory. So there is significant amount of evidence out there if you care to go on your own time and research this, because I feel like this subject, people can think it's kind of awkward to like expect yourself to go out into the woods for a therapeutic reason, but there is scientific evidence to back this. So without further ado, this is my father, Ron Unks, and we're just going to kick it off with some personal experience questions. And I want you to begin this interview and this podcast sharing your personal journey with mental health and how you discovered specifically forest therapy, because we know life is long and have been through a lot of different scenarios throughout your life, and what specifically has impacted your mental health journey. And we don't have to hop right into forest therapy off the bat if you just want to talk about mental health in general, whatever it may be. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Cameron, for inviting me to be part of this new podcast. I always enjoy talking about this topic. But your first question there is going to be that's a pretty serious one right off the bat. What got me involved in mental health? First of all, my opinion, let's put it out there that I'm not a professional or anything. I just do what I think is common. I joke that I have been diagnosed with common sense. So we'll let it at that. But as far as mental health, I think it's a word today, like all the other words, we use it to be a negative. And I think everybody has mental health. It's whether how healthy is it? How healthy is your mental health is the way you should look at it. So somebody says, oh, I got mental health. Well, doesn't everybody? It's just at what level is your health? Just like everything else. If you're going to the gym, okay, at what level are you? Yeah. But you ask about me and how I got involved in this. It was a crazy, crazy time. A lot of it's very personal, and I don't know if I'm ready to share on a platform like this, my personal journey. But we'll just let it with, there was a time in my life that was super crazy. Didn't know if I was coming or going. And I happened to reach out to a counselor, and I started going to counseling. And after about a year, the counselor introduced me to Shinrin Ruko, which translates to forest bathing. And I thought, this is crazy. Do I need a shower cap? Do I need a towel? I didn't know what any of it was about. And of course, you get nervous when you're trying to experience something new. But as soon as I stepped into the woods with a little bit of guidance to be introduced to something that I've always done. I mean, I've always been an outdoors person, always hiked, fished, and those type of things. Yeah. And these are the things that we need in our lives to keep us healthy. And people can joke about it all they want. I'm a tree hugger, whatever they want to joke about, they can. But there's science, lots of science coming out now to back up this whole, what used to be a theory to now being a fact. That it's very simple to say, where did we come from? Right. And now where are we? Technology is destroying, in my opinion, the technology is destroying our mental health in a bad way because we're not balancing it. I mean, this technology that we're using to be able to do this, I'm in central Pennsylvania and you're in Myrtle Beach. I mean, we're able to do this call. It's awesome. But meanwhile, this is only part of my day. I hiked over 6 miles today and had 5 clients on top of a mountain. It's a balance. We got to balance it out. So my journey started with being introduced to it, not knowing where it was going to lead. But approximately 10 years later, I'm working in the facility now. I'll throw their name out there, White Deer Run Treatment Center. I work at a rehab. And, you know, part-time there, being able to take clients from doing their AA, NA meeting inside of a building to being able to go on top of a mountain and do it. The success rate is incredible. I had clients today. I had a grown man that did 10 years incarcerated. He's only been out for a few years, couldn't find his way. Had him on top of the mountain today, and he broke down in tears saying he had a spiritual awakening. That's what I'm talking about. You can take somebody that's doing something wrong, and there's bad people in this world. I'm not saying it. There's bad people in this world that should be locked up and locked up forever. So don't get on that topic, right? But, sometimes it's not the best thing. I mean, this guy has been in and out of trouble, and today he got an eye opener. He got a spiritual awakening by being on top of the mountain. And it puts science in it. It's the phytosides. It's the essential oils that are on the mountain, and it activates part of our brain to release white blood cells, NK cells, which are flowing through your body, and it's making you healthy. It's simple. It's simple to break it down to that point. I don't know. Does that give you enough without getting too personal about my journey?
Yeah, that's good. I want to just take a minute to highlight the fact, because in a lot of, I think, modern day culture, a lot of men specifically hesitate to go to therapy because they see it as a weakness. So what would you say
Absolutely
about that?
Again, it was a bottom out for me. Pausing because, you know, I don't want to talk about some things. It was a bottom out for me that there was no alternative. Literally going to jump off of a bridge every day. Felt there was no answer. I had, you know, 3 children. I had you and your brother and sister. And really, that was the only thing that was keeping me anchored to this side. And to find yourself at that rock bottom, and you know on a conscious level that things will get better, but in that moment, your mental health is so beaten down that you don't know what to do and where to turn to. And I thank God that I had an opportunity to sit down with a counselor, and the person that told me, you know, that I needed to go to counseling, I simply said that I'm to the point where I'll do anything. I'll do anything because the alternative that I'm thinking is not a good one. And when I got to the counselor, right away I thought about, you know, a couch laying down, and somebody's going to take notes while I'm bleeding my heart out, and I have my guard up, and I'm not going to tell nobody nothing. I'm not letting nobody in here, right? That was my whole perspective of it. So the guards that I had up, I clearly made a point to myself that if I walk in and I feel comfortable, I'll stay. If I feel a little bit edgy, I'm out of here. Well, when I walked into the office, I was pleasantly surprised. It was a lodge in top of the mountain. I almost said the name of the town. Keep that. I walked into this lodge, and you know, when you walk into a cabin that's been closed up, how it has that hunter,
smell.
you know, the cabin smell. Let's just say
it.
It went right through me, and I went into a comfort zone. And I visited that counselor for over a year. So, to get yourself into a comfortable position, the counseling doesn't necessarily have to be a couch. It could be a
Yeah.
cabin. It could be
Mhm.
somebody that takes you for a hike and forest therapy.
Yeah.
There's all different levels of counseling. You just got to find out what fits you. And if something doesn't work, don't throw counseling away. Look for something else.
Yeah.
A lot of churches have life coaches. I mean, maybe you just need somebody to step you in a direction for clarity.
Yeah.
But just don't
No,
get
that's good.
wrapped up to saying, I'm not going to try that.
Yeah. And that's good too, because I feel like some people, well, I think it's a pride thing for a lot of men because they think it's
Yes.
like, but like you said at the beginning, it's very like, it's like your mental or your physical health or like spiritual health. And then you have your mental health or emotional health, whatever you want to refer to it as.
Yep.
So I just think it's important to highlight that there shouldn't, I don't think we're getting away from the stigma of it being like, but I feel like when you were probably like a teenager, young adult, it was very like men didn't go to
Oh
therapy.
yeah. Suck it
It's
up.
like,
Tough guy,
yeah,
right?
like,
Nobody wants to
or if,
say that
or
I'm weak.
yeah, or if you're going to therapy, everyone knows you have problems, and then
Well,
it's
that's
like,
right.
oh,
So, and that was part of the stigma because the therapist I was going to was almost an hour away. So how could anybody ever know, right? I'm going,
yeah,
hey, I got plans, and nobody knew. Nobody knew I was there, but me.
gotcha, cool stuff. So I'm gonna ask you the second question under the category of your personal experience, and I just want you to highlight specific aspects of forest therapy. I know there's a lot, but highlight specific aspects of forest therapy that you have found most beneficial to your personal mental health. Like besides just the broad being in nature, like what specific aspects do you think?
The specifics aspects of the forest therapy. Well,
Mm,
I don't want to get it. It's hard to describe unless you experience it. If anybody's been out and saw the sunrise and you feel that awe moment,
mhm.
it's finding that peaceful place. And the way that I find it, you know, the way personally I find it is I
Yeah,
have places that I feel comfortable and I mark those. I mark them in my mind and I know where they are. So if I'm in a jam in my mind, I know I
yeah,
can go there and find peace. The one thing I just thought of is at White Deer Run, there's this photograph that we have in one of our books that I'm hugging a tree. But the reason that tree was so drawn, I was drawn to that tree, was the roots are above the ground and they're actually
yeah.
wrapped around another tree that has since fallen down. So
Oh,
we
wow.
call it our tree hugging the tree. I
Yeah,
go there a lot because it just looks like, the future, the past. We learn from the past. It's a place for me. So what I would recommend is finding a place you're comfortable. And if you're standing on the edge of the woods and saying, I'm not comfortable nowhere in the woods, if you're one of the people that have never been in the woods, I hike
yeah.
with people all the time that it's their first time ever in the woods, which I still have a
It's
struggle
interesting.
feeling
Yeah,
that there's people that have never been in the woods. And
mhm.
there's some people that grow up in, urban environments and they've seen nothing but concrete.
They just
So
stay
to get
there.
them
Yeah,
connected to those things is just amazing to watch the transformation, why they connect. And once you find that space, you have to narrow down. And what I like to tell people to do is you figure in your mind a 1 foot by 1 foot square, and you put your mind in that and don't let it come out. And there's so many times that I'll find things that you wouldn't even see. And when
yeah,
I have a group of people out doing forest therapy, what I encourage them to do, the words I use, the invitation is find something smaller than you've ever seen it. And when you see a grown man, the
yeah.
gangster, tattoos on his face, looks like he
Yeah,
wants to really hurt you when you just look at him. When
yeah,
you see a grown man like that on a knee, looking underneath a stump, and then later when he wants to share that he was following a beetle in his mind, he saw this beetle, and then in his mind he's like, where's he going? Where's his home? And he was down on a knee watching this beetle underneath a stump do whatever beetles do. But
Yeah.
he said it was the first time in his life that he could lower his guard because he didn't have to watch his back. He didn't have to worry about somebody coming up behind him and hurting him. He actually had the comfort of letting his mind go into that little square and travel with that beetle. And that's the one thing when I first started getting into forest therapy by myself, that I would
Yeah.
find a space in the forest and I would just sit there. And you would sit and you would sit and before you know it, so much time would go by. You didn't, it got to be a point where I'd have to set an alarm to remind me, I walk into the woods and you set an alarm for 2 hours. So you knew that because I try not to look at my watch, turn your cell phone, turn all that stuff off.
Yeah.
So you're not being disturbed.
No distractors.
And you totally get lost in the space. So I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear.
No, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I think when a lot of people don't know what it is, they're just like forest therapy. They either think they have to go like deep in the woods or like
No.
when I did my search, the Shinrin Yoku is what came up. And it
Mm-hmm.
says it's the Japanese practice of immersing oneself in the forest, which has been known to show significant mental health benefits. But it's not like a whole when you think about a Japanese practice in the forest, people think like Buddhist monks out in the forest meditating on top mountains and
Right.
stuff. It's not
And
necessarily that. There's more to it. Yeah.
right.
Or
What it
less.
is
Yeah.
it's getting people back to nature. I'm looking over here and there's a plant here. There's plants all over my house because the plants is the environment. There are people, and you can Google this as, for like retirement homes or nursing homes.
Yeah.
You can actually take the plants to them and let them spend time. You hear many people how they talk to their plants and they interact with their plants.
Yeah.
I challenge anybody that's going to eat a plant, somebody that gardens, next time before you harvest a tomato or harvest one of your herbs, have a conversation with the plant. Let your mind go into the plant is a living, breathing thing, and it's allowing you to have part of it to nourish you. When you do something like that, it magnifies your spiritual and your mental side of
Yeah. That's what I
just
was about.
eating the food. Take your favorite. For me, when I did this first time, I used raspberry. I mean, I eat raspberries, I enjoy raspberries. But when I was first introduced to this style, you took the raspberry and you spent 5 minutes mentally conversating with the raspberry. And within a minute, your mouth starts to water because you're imagining what it's going to taste like. And I've never tasted fruit so sweet as I did that time because your mind is already anticipating what it's going to be. You have all these emotions wrapped up. And then
Like
when you actually eat it, now your body knows what to do with it. And the nourishment in it actually is better for you. So if you
That's
just throw it
interesting.
down your throat and you swallow
Don't
it,
think about
yeah,
it.
you're going to
Yeah.
get benefits from it. But you can magnify those benefits from your food when you take time to actually think about where it is, where it comes from, and how it's going to nourish. Ask the plant, please give
Yeah.
me part of you to nourish me, and watch the benefits you'll see from the mental side of that.
Yeah. That's cool. That kind of ties into like a deeper, like almost spiritual side. I think that like the energy and everything's
We're
connected
all
type deal.
connected. We're
Yeah.
all connected.
Yeah. That's cool. So I wanted to tap into the actual practice of it. And you just so you already tapped into like the guy looking at the beetle and stuff. But I was just gonna ask the question of what a typical forest therapy session looks like. Like how many people, how long are you gone? How far do you go? Do people get tired and dehydrated? Like, what's the deal with all that?
Yeah.
Any funny stories?
When I talk to my clients and they've never experienced anything before, and they, let's go for a hike, and I tell them right away it's not a hike, it's a forest therapy walk, it's a
Yeah.
journey, and they're like, well, what are we gonna do? And is it too far? Is it too long? And the way I describe it, most everybody knows a football field's 100 yards, so I say we're gonna go 100 yards in 2 hours, and they're like, 2 hours to go 100 yards? I can walk that in like 5 minutes. Yeah, but the problem is if you think about a ball field and you think about taking the time to count how many blades of grass and how many pieces of clover, how many butterflies and how many bees are in that field, Now you narrow that field down to it takes a whole lot longer than just walking across it. So what I do is I, I like to take groups of five. If I get over groups of five, I have a hard time um, keeping track of everybody because sometimes
Having
people will really
one-on-one.
start to
Yeah.
wander on their own because there's different invitations I do that allows them to go out and about and do their own thing because I want
Gotcha.
I want their minds to wander, and then a
Mhm.
lot of times their minds wander, their feet start wandering. So it's hard for me to keep an eye on a lot of people. So I like groups of five or less. And then what I do is I start out with a circle, a few breathing exercises, a light guided meditation to try to tie you into nature, the breathing and feeling the breathing come through you. And then
Gotcha.
what I do is when I wrap that part of it up, I invite them to open their eyes really slow if they have closed their eyes, and when they open up their eyes really slow, to be looking in a direction that they feel being called to. So they might spin around or look up or down. And then when they open up their eyes, I want them to open their eyes as slow as they can and really focus on what you see. And imagine that you're looking at that for the very first time. And then as you're thinking about looking at that for the very first time, imagine whatever you're looking at is looking back at you and seeing you for the very first time. And when I do that little exercise, it is amazing the stories you share. I mean, I just thought of like three right away that are pretty personal, and I'll keep them
Mhm.
private and keep them in that circle. And that's one of the things when you do this, there's a lot of things that'll come out in people's stories that I wish I could journal and tell
Yeah.
these stories because it is mind blowing some of the stuff that comes out. But what it is, it's them tying back into nature. And then from there, I just go through random invitations. For example, I'll just give you a few example what I mean by an invitation. I go into a session that we're going to walk from this point to this point, and I want you to walk as slow as you can and look for
Mhm.
something in motion. And if you can't find anything in motion, it's because you're the thing that's in motion. Slow down. And then when
Interesting.
you do that, people will find the smallest thing moving. You'll see somebody really zoom their mind in on an ant walking on a blade of grass. Or
Yeah.
you'll see somebody kind of move their head sideways and they saw a bird that you can barely see in the sky. And why they looked up, you don't know. I mean, they're being drawn. The energy, the spiritual side of the nature is they're pulling them in one direction. And when you allow your mind to go free, you have no idea where your mind's being pulled. As a child, I used to lay on my back in the grass and we'd look at clouds and we'd look at what shapes they were. All this looks like this and this looks like this. As we grow
Yeah.
up as an adult, if you saw a grown man, if you saw me laying in the middle of a field looking
The
at
imagination.
clouds, you'd say,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that guy's mental health? Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you need to do those type of things to allow your mind to be clear. So that's what happens. And then we'll get back together. I usually let that go for 10-15 minutes. And then we'll get together. People can share if they want to. And then
Mhm.
I'll give another invitation. And then we go through, several different invitations. And I'm not going to sit here and say the ones
Yeah.
I use. I encourage you to find a forest therapy guide in your area and go on a forest therapy. And the invitations will be crazy because I shouldn't say crazy. The invitations will be so simple that your mind will go crazy trying to simplify things. Um, I invite you to close your eyes and listen to the wind.
Mhm.
You know, and you'll
Yeah.
by listening to the wind. If you're near any hemlock trees, oh my word, do they sing?
Mhm.
When things that you overlook by just
Yeah.
walking and not paying attention. But if you're focused in on, hey, I'm listening for the wind. The wind really don't make any noise, does it? Well, itself it doesn't. But when it goes through different things, it's
Yeah.
great. It's just mind blowing. And then after doing a few sessions in an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes into, because if you do your research, the research says anything over 30 hours, you're getting the health benefits of the essential oils, the phytosides out there, and your NK cells are all being elevated after 30 minutes out. If you do
Gotcha.
2 to 3 hours, you're maximizing these health benefits.
Yeah.
So after that, I like to send everybody out to find a tree, a rock, somewhere that they feel comfortable, and just
Mhm.
have a, a moment with themselves. And while
Gotcha.
they're doing that, I will set up a small little area, and I've collected things along the walk that I have hot water with me, and I will steep it and make tea. And then when we come back together to share that moment, if they want to, I have a little bit of nature that they can have tea if they want to. And it's the simplest things that
Yeah, that's
if
cool.
nobody's
I didn't know
ever
that.
had, pine needles in steeped
Mhm.
water, if somebody's never had birch, and birch has a very wintergreen flavor. That's one of my favorites to use.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very sweet flavor, depending on what
Mhm.
season it is. Pick a few raspberries, honeysuckles I have in my area. There's so many things like that that you can pay attention to if you're while you're walking. So then we share that, and then I ask them, if they want to share, they can, and they can have tea if they want to. But having the tea allows them to visually feel the forest going into their stomach with the warmth of the water, the smell, the aroma from the tea. Part of that forest is in them, and they're going to take that forest with them, and it'll be with them forever.
That's cool.
That is very healthy for your
Powerful.
mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah,
Anytime
so
then you feel like you're in some kind of space, you're like, I got that forest in me. Remember that time that I was here? I got that
mhm.
forest in me. So it's
And I
it's
think
very
it's
positive.
yeah, it's cool in your specific situation too, working at rehab center, because I feel like
Mhm.
probably most of their therapy is centered around drugs or alcohol and how to, like, overcome those battles. And then the forest therapy side of it is just very, like, escaping, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Um,
Sounds pretty
where
cool.
I'm at, we do focus on um, the traditional stuff, and
Mhm.
I don't want to. I'm going to go out there and say I can't speak for them. I'm not a representative
Yeah.
or whatever. Um, all the disclaimers, we got to be worried about today. But
Yeah.
we do
You get canceled.
um, forest therapy. We do art therapy, music therapy. I mean, if you study frequencies. I mean, music therapy, you can listen to music and it can push you over the edge or it can calm you down. It's a choice
Yeah.
what you want to turn the station to. We have Reiki, acupuncture. Those are all things that are there for us and they all work together. And I'm not the guy that's going to say this is going to work for you and that won't. I believe in balance. You have to be able to have somebody to talk to. You got to have a counselor. You got to have somebody, you got to be able to go for your physical health. You got to be able to see a
Yeah.
doctor. But you also, you want to use your acupuncturist. You want to use your art therapy. You want to use your music
Yeah.
therapy. You want to use your Reiki. You want to use your forest therapy. You want to put that stuff all together and find out what balance works for you. Uh, I have my Reiki healing certification. I think it's
Mhm.
awesome to perform Reiki. Today I had the opportunity to do Reiki, a small session Reiki in the forest. I mean,
Cool.
if you want to talk about having the healing energy, go in the forest where you have nature on your side, and then
Mhm.
you have God's creation, nature, and then when you see somebody have an awakening saying, "Holy heck, what was that?" And I'm just like, "That was you. That's your
Mhm.
potential. It's nothing special with me. We're all vessels. We all connected. We're all one. An
Yeah.
ant is just as important as a beetle as I am. We all need something. If we won't have this soil in our ground, if we don't have snails and slugs chewing things up and spitting them back out. I
Yeah.
mean, when you
People
start
don't think
looking at
about
the
it.
connect, what's that?
I said people don't tend to think about that stuff,
No, they
like the
don't.
role it
I
plays.
remember I think the last time you and I had a conversation like this,
Yeah.
you kept swatting at the bugs. You're like, oh, bugs,
Yeah,
bugs, bugs.
it's annoying.
But they all have a purpose. And then,
Yeah.
so when you start looking at things as a balance, everything has a place. So some people, if you want to get in the side of medication, some people
Mhm.
need medication to get over the hump. But in
Yeah.
my opinion, in today's society, everybody wants a quick fix. When
Yeah.
did we stop using our food for our medicine? You know,
Agree.
if
Yeah.
we take the food that we put into our body and say, this is to nourish me and make me stronger, is a whole lot more different than saying, hey, I want that because it tastes good.
Yeah.
Because we can use
Different
any kind
mindset.
of chemical to make anything taste good.
Yeah.
Stop eating things because they taste good and eat things because they're going to be good for you. And
Yeah.
that's
And
the
on,
holistical side of it. Everybody
yeah.
wants that quick fix. So I want to go to the doctor and I want to take a cholesterol
Kind of
pill, but you don't
easier
want to
thing.
stop eating the junk that's causing the cholesterol problem. It's just
Yeah.
so balance
Hmm.
yourself. I like forest therapy. I like the energy healing. I like the spiritual side of things. And I'm pretty healthy. Um,
Yeah.
I'm preparing tomorrow. We're doing a 32-mile hike over the weekend. These are things that keep me healthy. There's, I'm not going to tell you how old I am because I just had a birthday. uh, you can put that in your comments, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I look at people my age, and it's mind blowing. The
Yeah.
people that have a hard time getting up and doing things. This is because we're not letting our mental health, physical health, and spiritual health balance. They all have to be balanced to have good physical health, spiritual health, and mental health. And if it's not
Agree.
balanced, you'll be sitting on a couch saying, why does this hurt? Why does that hurt? Why can't I do this? Well,
Yeah.
I always tell my clients, look in the mirror. Look in the
That's
mirror.
like
That's where it's going to start.
there are the different like models of looking at it, like the biological side of it, the behavioral or
Right.
environmental side of it, which is what I was thinking about. Like I spent some time doing research, but actually thinking about it before our call was that like I wonder how like there are people out there who obviously whether it's we can even tie it in the physical too. Like but mental health specifically have like imbalance in chemicals in their brain or someone who
Right.
has whatever in their body that makes them it harder for them, but
That's why you
I'd
trust
be
your doctor.
I'd be interested in seeing, like, the difference, with that and versus, like, the environmental behavioral, like, aspects of it. Because I mean, it would make much more sense to say that most of these people, even if they're, like, looking for a shortcut, most of the time the environment is what is causing, like,
I
the
agree.
struggle for them. Yeah.
So, so you were born and raised in central Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
You're going to find things differently than where you are now. The people that were born and raised where you are. If you were born and raised in Texas or California, you would look at things differently. Those environments definitely have um, a play in where you are in your mind. You may not look at
Yeah, you were saying. You can go ahead.
so wherever that is, you're going to find it. It does have an impact, but I think you can easily change that. And people say that, oh, you don't know my circumstances. You don't know where I come from. Well, no, most times I don't. But you can make a change. You can
Yeah.
change that. And people say, well, no, I can't. I can't change it. I can't do this. I can't do that. No, that's an excuse. A story just come to my mind. I met a guy at, at work, a client, and he introduced himself, and I just say Bob. He introduced, hi, I'm Bob. I had ADHD, DHD. And he went through all these. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. We just
Labeling
met, and you
yourself.
give me your name, and you give me a diagnosis of acronyms. That's where I think that it's going the wrong direction. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and I forget the exact details, but I encourage anybody to go look this up. I read a story one time where a family had a child that was born with MS, and they got with all the people that were going to help with this situation, and they got with some people, professionals that said, if you want them to grow up not being like everybody else that has MS, don't let them with the children that have MS, and don't tell them they have MS. And
Yeah.
it
Like,
was,
don't
I remember
victimize
the
them.
exact details, but most children walk within a year. It took this child, like, I'm going to say 8, 9, 10 years to walk, but they didn't know any different. And I think
Yeah.
that is so true with what we do in society today. As soon as somebody has a little bit of an ailment and we put an acronym on them,
Like to use
then
it.
you
Yeah.
use that as an excuse for your behavior. When I first started working a White Deer Run, I had a bunch of people around me, peers that were very good, knew I had no experience in this field at all, and stepped right in and helped me. And the one thing that I really took is there was a gentleman that told me that you have to narrow it down to, is it their physical, mental, behavior, or addiction? So if somebody is acting this way because of their addiction, we know it's their addiction and we can help them with the addiction. If we know
Yeah.
somebody is acting this way because of their mental health, we can help them with their mental health. If this is my opinion, if somebody's
Yeah.
acting this way because of behavior, we give them a quick kick in the butt and tell them to
Yeah.
straighten up and work on their physical and their mental health, and the addiction will, be easier. But you
Yeah.
can't use it as an excuse. There's so many times that I'll try to say something to somebody and they'll say, well, how should I act? I'm an addict. That is such a cop out to me. Um,
Yeah. Or like,
you
yeah.
can't
People,
use your circumstances for an excuse to stay in the circumstances. Um, I don't want to quote you, but I remember you
yeah.
saying one time, if you have depression and you know you have depression and you sit in a corner and say you have depression, how are you going to get better with your
Yeah.
depression? And
That's my
yes, pardon me?
I was gonna say that's my big thing with the whole environment subject is like, not that people are discredited, like not that their mental struggles are any less valid, but that
Oh, I believe they're
if
real.
someone yeah, but if someone is causing it themselves, it's harder to, like, almost have, like, empathy for them because you're like, "Yeah, but you say you have depression, but you stay inside all day and you watch TV for hours at a time," which also, like, it puts you in a trance, like, it's not what you were made to do. You stare at a screen
Right.
that long, etcetera, etcetera, and it's like, well, if you instead of walking around telling everyone you have depression or blaming your actions on your depression, like, the whole goal of, like, mental health and even talking about it on the podcast is to like become better and
Right.
like reach new levels when I think a lot of people that do struggle with it are almost comforted by like the title of having something wrong with them. Like
Right.
instead of being like, "Oh, I have ADHD, how can I work through this?" It's more so, "Oh, I have ADHD, I just can't pay attention to anything." Like it's like, "Okay, but like what are
Right.
you going to do to so you can pay attention to things?" You know?
So,
It's
so
just a mindset.
since I've been working up there and I see all these diagnoses and somebody says about, attention deficit. Absolutely. I'm so I can have 4 or 5 projects going at one time, and it's not because I
Yeah.
can multitask, it's because when I'm working on something, I get distracted about something else. You're doing laundry, something this simple. You're doing laundry, and then you walk past something, and you're like, "Oh, there's that." And then you start doing that, and then the laundry basket gets set down, and before
Yeah.
you know it, you're doing multiple things. So what I do for myself is I say, hey, I do have a hard time focusing on one thing at one time. This is my goals for the day, and I'm going to randomly do these things. So,
Yeah.
okay, I want to wash my truck today, but while I'm walking to get my wash to my truck, I gotta go past the laundry, right? So I'm going to take my
So
laundry down
planning.
on the way to
Yeah.
wash my truck so I can fill my bucket with soapy water. And and yeah, my focus is all over the place. People
Yeah.
watch me and they're like, "What are you
And then you
doing? You got like
forget to
10
do
things to,"
something, and
but
then you're like,
I,
"Oh, I forgot to do that," and then it's gotta go
yeah.
back and yeah,
So
yeah,
and I play that game on myself, knowing that I do those type of things, but I'm not going to use it for an excuse not to do anything. And I
yeah,
think that's the difference. And I couldn't, 10 years ago, I may not have said that because I
yeah,
was that person that would say, my life sucks. Why am I doing this? Poor me.
yeah.
You ever see the diagnosis of Winnie the Pooh? It's awesome because, you know, my wife,
Yeah, they're all
Deb and I,
different.
we use that on
They're all
each other all the time. And I encourage that
mhm,
because if I'm feeling down and she recognizes it, she'll say, "Are you going to be an Eeyore today?" And,
yeah,
it puts me in a place. It's a choice whether I want to be Eeyore today. Yeah, I might
yeah,
be sad today, But being sad sitting on the couch or being sad out mowing the grass, you're still sad, but you're not
You're
feeling
choosing
sorry
to
for
be
yourself in a corner.
miserable. Yeah.
And to have something, I met a young lady a couple weeks ago while we were out hiking, camping, and doing our thing.
Mhm.
Um, she's on some medication that's preventing her from going in the military. She wants to go in the military. And I said, well, then is this a life medication you're going to be on the rest of your life? And she says, I don't know. And I said, do you think that's a
Mm.
question for your doctor? And she just smiled. And I said, if you really want to go in the military and this medication is what's keeping you from even trying, why don't you set up a plan with your doctor and say, hey, I want to go in the military. This medication's preventing me. Is there a different medication? Is there something I can do to work myself to get myself off this medication? Maybe this
Yeah.
medication can be eliminated if I do something else. But these are questions you got to ask to move forward. Don't sit and say, oh, I want to be this, but I can't be that because of this.
Yeah.
Constantly work towards that goal.
Yeah.
And
I
I
agree
think
with that.
so many people get wrapped up in, the poor me. Oh, you don't know my circumstances. I got this, 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 and this. Well, when I grew up in school, I graduated a class of 168 people.
Yeah.
Out of the whole four grades between ninth and 12th grade, there was one diabetic in our
Mhm.
whole school. And everybody knew it, and everybody was cautious, and everybody was, sympathetic and helpful for this person and help
Yeah.
them. We helped them as much as we could, right? I challenge you to go to a high school today and see how many type 2 diabetes there are in the school. It's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
The
And
health
it's not
pandemic is crazy.
because of anything other than the stuff that you can control.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, education. You know,
Yeah.
do you, how many parents do you see giving their 2-year-old a Mountain Dew? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. On the I wanted to, since you said education, that kind of sparked something in me. I was like I think one thing that has helped me through, because I talked to Jocelyn about it a lot. I'm like, you know what? Like, I feel like I don't, you working on yourself is a hard process. I don't think people
absolutely.
understand. Like people are just like going through their life and you might be getting better, but when you look back, you're like, holy cow, that was kind of taxing on me, you know? And I always tell her, I'm like, I feel like I've made so much progress from like a year ago or however long it may have been. And one of the things that helped me, and like that's part of the reason I like psychology so much, but one of the things that helped me is like understanding why you feel or act a certain way, like understanding the psychology behind it. And that's kind of why I wanted
Right.
to create this podcast. Cause like for example, drinking, I drank too much and then I'm like, but I never knew that like drinking releases dopamine. And then I had this dopamine chase that wants more and more and more and has no sense of like rationality when it comes to it and just keeps doing that. And then once I understand that, I'm like, that's kind of like, it's simple and it's science, and it's kind of dumb of me to like continue to do this if I
Right.
know that's how I react to it. So just simple things like that, understanding like the physical and like the psychological side of it, like what actually happens, and understanding like the psychology side of it, I think helps people because it's like it'd be like if they understood more so how like drugs or alcohol affected their brain, maybe it would like simplifies the problem. Like it makes the problem a lot more simple. It's like, okay, this isn't like anything bigger than like chemicals in my brain. And that even ties into everything like outside of that realm. Like it's like if you are having like relationship issues or this or that or whatever it may be, it's like, well, like what are you doing in your own head to make this worse or better? And
Right.
like that's why I recently like my thing that I always tell myself recently is like everything is what you make it. So like every time I start to feel like not my normal self, uncomfortable, anxious, whatever it may be, I'm just like, hey, assess the situation. And then from there, like, is this worth like turning it in or manifesting it into something that it doesn't need to be? Or is it something, like kind of like stepping back, realizing, okay, I'm reacting this way because my brain feels this way. Now, what is the logical, beneficial move to make kind of thing? Versus just like people emotionally react to everything. And that's basically been my focus lately is like, hey, you're gonna like I finally had the point in my life, and maybe it's like an older thing, like getting older, more mature, but it's
You're
like
getting
where
older.
Yeah, where I realized that, like, if I feel a certain way about anything, like, chances are within 2 or 3 hours that I'm talking about negative feelings, but
Right.
chances are 2 or 3 hours, those negative feelings are gonna pass, and I'm gonna be like, "What was I like?" And I used to, like, get so sucked into those things and be like, "Why do I
Do
think
you
that way?
remember
Why do I
being
think that? I
little?
have a problem, like, this and that," and, like, I'd be like, "It's not that big of a deal." Like,
Right.
things come and go, you're a human, you have crazy thoughts all the time, you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say, do you remember when you were little and you always used to get mad at me because I would play devil's advocate because whatever I knew made you mad, I would
Yeah.
do it. You'd say, "You're just doing that to make me mad." And I'm like, "I'm not doing it to make you mad. I'm doing it to help you learn to control this feeling."
Yeah.
Because the feelings we have, every feeling. Somebody asked me the other day about, love. How do you know that you're in love? Do you believe in love at first sight? And no, I because with that first sight feeling is a knee jerk reaction. It's not love. Love is something is
Yes.
you grow and
Infatuation.
build into. You have an
Yeah.
attraction to somebody. Love is
Mhm.
an emotion. It's a feeling. You fall in a love, you fall out of love. I don't believe that because
Yeah.
you can be in love with ice cream, right? And you can be in
Yeah.
love with your spouse. You can be in love with your children. There are emotions and feelings you have. And the feelings
Yeah.
that you have for those things is how hard you work on it. I seen this quote years ago that it's in my mind all the time. And you see somebody trying to get something that somebody else has, and you hear the term different time. The grass is greener on the other side of the fence, or the grass
Yeah.
appears greener on the other side of the fence. And
Yeah,
I heard this
100%.
that the grass is greener where you water it.
Yeah.
That
Makes
is
so
in
much more
my
sense.
mind all the time. It is the happiness is where you water it. You can
Yeah.
sit and focus on things that are negative. You're going to have good days and bad days. You can have people that you really care about and you can be really mad at them. But
Yeah.
that doesn't change the connection. It changes the feeling and the emotion. And that's the mental health side of it, that people can do something and they can get
Mhm.
really angry and they let that anger uh, fester into something that could be a feud, a lifelong feud that would go on
Yeah.
and on and on forever. And or
Yeah.
you can let it
It's
go. Um,
yeah.
we're talking 10 years ago when things weren't going really good, and I thought that I was hitting rock bottom. There were people in my life that, I mean, it was terrible. I thought I would never. You know, I
Yeah.
don't have conversations with them.
Mhm.
I'd if I see them, I'd say hi. That's probably about it.
Yeah.
But their reactions that they had control over me back then, they can't do that now. They can go be their person, and I'll be my person. But
Yeah.
it takes a lot of, let's say, mental training to be
Mhm.
able to do
Yeah.
that.
Self-discipline train yeah.
Gaslighting. You hear
Yeah.
these words. I hear these words all the time. Gaslighting. Oh, he's
Gaslight.
gaslighting me. He's gaslighting me.
Yeah.
That term is so ridiculous. And what I tell people, I said, the only thing other people can do is throw gas on you. You're the only one that can light the fire. So if
Yeah.
you want to be gaslit, you're
You wanna feed
gaslighting
into it.
yourself. You're
Yeah.
feeding into it and you're gaslighting yourself. It's just take 3 seconds, breathe. If you can get yourself to
Yeah.
breathe for 3 seconds, you can get 5 seconds. And if you can get five, you can get 10. You don't, that knee jerk reaction is usually never good. If it's a reflex, like emergency fight or flight thing, reflexes are good.
Yeah.
Emotional reflex, very
Not
seldom
good.
does it work
Yeah.
out good for you.
Bad everywhere. Bad
Breathe.
in jobs, bad in relationships, bad in everything.
The one thing I
It's
try to
just
tell
never gonna
myself
get
is
a positive result if you do that.
right. Another thing I keep in my mind is I do not want to apologize for being wrong. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. So I take a breath, and then if I make a mistake, if I made a mistake, honest mistake, I apologize. I made a
Yeah.
mistake. But you can't say you made a mistake if you say something dumb out of
Yeah.
anger. It's not a
Yeah.
mistake. You
You're
spoke out of anger.
yeah. Oof. That's
So
deep.
go for me. I
Yeah.
go deep in the woods and I can yell and scream at the trees all I want. The wind just blows and they
Hit 'em with
talk
the
back to
stick.
me and
Yeah.
you know
It's
And
calming.
that's a vent. You got to
Yeah.
have the space to get your vent.
So one thing that I thought would be a good question to end this with, but I don't want to forget it, so I'm just gonna ask you it now.
Mhm.
With talking about all of this stuff, the average person will say that they're busy and have job, got to work out, got kids, got spouse, all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
So, but you did mention it's a 30-minute time period outside. So, what do you suggest to people who are living every day, normal life that can't just go to the woods for hours a day?
Well, some people don't have the woods to get to.
That
Um,
that too in the city, yeah.
but you use the best case scenario, and there's so many things you can do. And this is one of the things that I've been meaning to do. Different people have been trying to encourage me to do is I'll
Mm,
do a virtual walk. So if somebody doesn't have time, they can put themselves in a dark space, use it like background noise, use it like a guided meditation. Uh,
yeah,
you build a room at your house. There's all kinds of things you can do. If you tell me you don't have time to do what makes you healthy, the first thing I would encourage you to do is look at your timer on your phone. How many hours did you spend
oh
on that
yeah,
screen? How many hours of screen time? So you want to say you don't have time to make yourself healthy? Staring at that screen is making you unhealthy in so many ways.
yeah,
Um, do studies on that.
yeah,
Don't take my word for it. Look it up. You can. It's easy to find answers today. I wish I had the internet when I was growing up, but
yeah.
just the light coming off the screen. I'm a photographer. The light that I'm looking at this screen, looking at you, is a projected light coming from a computer projecting a light into me. The light that
Yeah.
this light is shining is a light that's reflecting off of things so I can see them. This is natural. This is not. So what does that do to your mind? How about right now it's dark out here at our place. So right away, your pineal gland, it's dark outside. It's starting to produce melatonin so I can go to sleep. No. What do? I put a screen in my
That's
face
my face.
until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and then wonder
Yeah,
why I feel like crap tomorrow. So don't say you
and
don't have time.
yeah,
You don't have time. What is your health worth to you? You should put that on the priority. I tell people
yeah,
all the time, you get yourself 100%, everybody else gets what's left over. Because if you're 100%, they're going to get more than what you're giving them now.
yeah,
So
that's
there's
true.
no
Yeah,
excuse for not having time.
good way to look at it. Yeah. So the next question that some of these questions I feel like we might have already tackled just through our normal conversation. So if so, we'll just kind of blow through them. But it was, in what ways does forest therapy positive impacted your mood or anxiety levels? So specifically focusing on like the anxious side of things, like feeling anxiety, because
Yeah,
depression and anxiety are the top two issues that people usually struggle with when
right.
it comes to mental
So
health. So
so this is not quite. It's like the side of forest therapy, not actually being out on a forest therapy walk. Um,
okay,
I have clients that not nature people. They have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm backdooring them. I'm playing
yeah,
that side of it. They'll be venting and their anxieties off and they're screaming and hollering about all kinds of silly stuff. And I say, well, you want to try something with me? And then I'd take them for a walk and I get them to walk like 20 feet to my garden. And now I'm in my garden and I kind of, as they're talking, I'm walking. Of course, they want me to listen. So they're talking, their anxiety's crazy.
yeah,
And I keep backpedaling, trying to get them closer and closer to my herb garden. And then once I get them to my herb garden, I'll reach across my hand and I'll hit the basil. Basil is very aromatic. If
yeah,
you touch it, it doesn't like to be touched and it'll fill the air. So as it's filling the air, I say, you want to try something? Because I'm sitting there monkeying with it. I said, you want to try something? I said, take one hand and rub this plant and take the other hand and rub this plant. And they're like, that's silly. And I said, well, I just want you to try this. Come on. So they're sitting there kind of doing one of these motions on these two plants. I said, now, really, I just want you to take a big deep breath, put both hands to your face, and tell me about your favorite pizza parlor that comes to your mind. And the two
hmm,
plants I had them rubbing is oregano and thyme. And when that hits their face, to watch their anxiety go from up here where they're ready to just walk off property and give up on everything, right? To
Yeah.
start to tell me about the pizzeria down Brooklyn that makes the best thin crust and best this,
Yeah.
best this, to see their mind go from wanting to explode to giving me detailed description about the inside of a pizza parlor. That is using the nature side of the forest therapy to take the anxiety from the highest to right down to where it should be. You can be angry and upset. You can't be out of control. And that's what we allow ourselves. We allow ourselves to spin till we're out of control. So these are one of
Yeah.
the things that I do for myself. If I feel myself get anxious, I go to my herb garden and start playing with different herbs. None particularly. I usually like to play with the ones that people don't, think about, like yarrow and plantain, and
Yeah.
you get in those type of things, and you're like, hey, how are you doing today? Because plantain's good for everything. It looks like spinach, you pick it off. Hey, how you doing today? And you chew a piece of it. You're making yourself part of the nature.
Yeah.
It's a simple 5-minute little exercise that'll
And
bring somebody right down.
that's cool too. And I think I'm trying to word this the right way, but basically, like when you mentioned like talking to the plants and stuff, I know a lot of people might think that's kind of weird, but you're saying that to help the individual mentally, like not actually
Mhm.
thinking like the plant necessarily here's your English words, but more so like
Right,
you're changing your mindset, like
right.
of appreciation
Well,
or like community. Because people will be like, "Oh, you're talking to plants, you're crazy," and it's like, no,
right.
not that. It's
Absolutely.
more about like changing. It's like talking to animals too; they can't
Right.
understand us. So
Eh,
it's the whole thing
because
of it changes it in your head.
as we become adults, it is crazy. But you take a 2-year-old and let a 2-year-old sit in a garden and watch who they
Yeah,
talk to and how they talk to.
talk to
But
plants for hours.
as we grow and
Mm,
become more mature, we're
yeah,
told that that's wrong. Well, is it wrong? It's part of our. What is wrong with saying thank you, oregano, for this leaf to make my spaghetti taste awesome? I see nothing wrong with that.
yeah. A
Am I
mindset of
saying?
gratitude. Yeah,
Am I saying, hey, little buddy, and then, oh yeah, it said this to me? Well, that's a different level. I mean, I'm talking
yeah,
about being part of one.
yeah,
You got to be balanced and thank the plant for giving you the nutrition you need to be as healthy as you can be.
yeah.
It's it's not
It's a
sitting out there thinking, oh, that plant has a voice and it's speaking to me. It's
yeah.
the mental connection.
Mhm.
It's
It's a
the
very like
energy side of it.
a very
Some people
like
like the taste of chives. Some people don't like the taste of chives. Right? It's
yeah.
that connection.
It reminds me of like a Native American type style of living, which is like what also I want to bring up is that personally, when I think of this, it makes sense because I'm like, okay, humans used to live in nature 24/7. That was our
Yep.
life. That's where we like, whether you believe in evolution or creation or whatever it may be, there is a significant amount of time where humans just spent their time in the forest, whether you believe the forest is, humans evolved within that and like that energy aspect, or whether God created the plants and everything for individuals as well. And I think that ties into why it feels good or like a relief of anxiety and stuff like that. Cause it's like, this is almost where you came from. I know people have different ideas on like ancestral like connections and stuff, but
Right.
it makes sense when it comes from an evolutionary perspective, And we even see that like as we start living in houses and as we live in more urban environments, like the average man doesn't have as high of testosterone because we're not in an environment where we have to survive as much. So now we see
Right.
the evolution kind of declining in the physical manner, although we've become a lot smarter. But I think part of our genes are still tied to that, like the history of where we came from. So you
Absolutely.
like go
I
out
agree
there
with
and you're
that.
like, "Whoa, this feels good." Like
Yeah.
this is what they used to do. They used to run around in bare feet. That's why grounding is a thing and stuff like that. So
Right. So you say grounding is a thing, and this is part of. I'm sitting here at my desk right now on this device with you, but under my feet is a grounding pad. So I have
oh, nice.
a pad that has copper wire in it, and it's plugged into just a ground wire that's grounded the house. So even though that I'm here in the environment around all this stuff, I'm still grounding myself. It's
Mhm.
such a health benefit that stop and think about how we naturally detox ourselves. Your different parts of your body. We'll just stay with your feet. Your feet is one of the easiest ways for your body to detox. It pushes out the bad stuff out of your body and goes out of your feet. So you're wearing a pair of shoes. Those shoes, you're working out, you sweat in them, right? Your body's detoxing, get yourself out. But now tomorrow, you go and put your feet right back in those same shoes that you just detoxed into. Some people, like myself, I have pairs of shoes that are 2 years old. That means it's got
Yeah.
2 years of my detoxing in those shoes. I think you need to spend some time just walking around barefoot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I encourage the viewers of the podcast to actually take their own time to research grounding. And it's because there is scientific evidence that backs it, which is cool. Because all these things are like, I feel like people don't think about this stuff, but it's like there is scientific evidence that backs these things.
Right. I was talking a little bit earlier about, energy healing, Reiki. If somebody want, a Reiki session, if you're going and having a Reiki session, what I encourage is whoever the Reiki healer is, look to see if they're barefooted or not. Because that'll tell you right away if they're grounded. They should be barefoot, and they should either be on a grounding pad or being on some type of soil that they can use the whole energy of the environment for that healing. And you will have an eye opener if you just take a few minutes out of your day and stand barefoot. Wherever. Walk outside and get the mail barefoot.
Yeah, there's a lot of
It'll make a
simple things
difference.
in nature that make a difference. Like science has said a lot about sunlight and how sunlight makes, like, absorbing sunlight through your eyes without sunglasses, like first thing in the morning, like 8 minutes or something like that of just that is supposed to boost your mood and your mental health. But then people hear that and it's like, why don't you get out and get the sunlight if you know that's what it does?
Why just do that?
Why don't you listen to good music? Yeah, like music that makes you happy,
So here's something I read about a year or so ago, and I've been doing it now for that amount of time. I don't wear sunglasses anymore because I read an article, and I'm not a doctor or scientist, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I've seen results with it myself. I don't wear sunglasses. I'll wear a hat on my head to keep the light, the direct light out of my eyes. But there's scientific proof that says that your cells of your skin produces different chemicals when your eyes see the bright light. So your cells actually go into protective mode when it knows it's bright. If you put a shade on your eyes, your body doesn't know that it's bright sunny out. So then we want to put what? We're going to put some type of chemical, skin cream, sun lotion, whatever on our body. How about we just, I don't have the answers for that. I don't know what the explanation is, but I know 100 years ago they didn't have the skin protection they have, and I'm sure they didn't have the skin cancer that they have today. What is these causes? Mental health, physical health, spiritual health. Narrow it down to one of those three things.
All right, so I don't know if you're able to share any like specifics of stories, but my next question was about you sharing any stories or testimonials from people who have benefited from this. I know you have hundreds of people who come through the program, so a lot of people benefit from it, but anything specific or like a certain thing to you that has stuck out over the years?
Well, I've already shared a few. Like today, the guy, 10 years incarcerated, and then he comes and he had the spiritual waking on the mountain. So that was today. And I also shared about the big tough guy that was on his knees watching the beetle. I shared that with you.
The pizza.
And pizza, I shared those stories with you. But here's one that we were on a hike going up the mountain. It wasn't a forest therapy walk. It was just a hike. But I share things about the forest therapy walk. And just a hike in the woods is very beneficial. And what I'm doing is I'm telling about our program and how we do things. And this one guy was making a mockery of it. He was making fun of it. And he was encouraging my anxiety to go up. And about an hour into the hike, he had a walking stick, and we had a stopping period. And there was a tree that I stand beside most every day that I hike. there's this tree that half of it's rotted out and there's a real soft spot towards the center of it. And it's a fairly large tree. Let's say, a foot to, 12 to 18 inches in diameter, and half of it's rotted out. It's got a soft spot in it.
Yeah.
But he got to the top of the mountain and he took his walking stick and he jabbed it in that soft spot and wiggled his stick around. And my anxiety was getting the best of me. And I thought, I'm not getting this guy. He's not biting in. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play with him and I'm going to go after him.
Yeah.
And I said, please stop. Don't do it. I know you don't respect anything that I'm talking about. And he went on the fence. Oh, I'm not saying I don't respect it. I'm not making fun. I said, oh, but you are. And I went after him and put him on the defense that he's defending himself now. And I said, if you really don't believe in anything that I'm saying, I encourage you to a challenge. And then now everybody's listening. So now that I got his, his manhood on the line because I challenged him, we're sparring now. And I said, I'd like you to apologize to that tree. And he goes, what? And I said, you just jabbed that tree, took your stick, stuck it in like a sword, and you hurt the tree. And he goes, it's a tree. And I said, so you don't mind apologizing to it? And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry, tree. I said, no. No, you're not getting off that easy. I said, I want you to truly, sincerely apologize to that tree. And he looked at me, and everybody's looking at him. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I want you to give the tree a hug and tell it you're sorry. And he's like, you're kidding, right? And I said, no, this is your challenge. You think what I'm talking about is all BS and has nothing to do with anything. I said, I like you to do this for me. Yeah, it shouldn't matter. Just hug it, make fun of me. I don't care. So he starts walking to the tree, and I'm like, wait a minute, one more thing. If you really want to see what I'm talking about and find out that what I'm talking about is not real, take your shoes and socks off. He goes, you're serious? And everybody else is like, come on, man. So he takes his shoes and socks off, throws them off with a little bit of attitude, and he walks over to the tree. And just as he goes to wrap his arms around the tree, I go, and one more thing. He goes, what? I said, when you hug the tree, right before you apologize, I want you to think about one of your closest loved ones and imagine this tree is them and sincerely apologize for the things that you've done wrong. He goes, really? I said, yeah. So he wraps his arms around the tree and he totally goes limp, like he had electrical shock. And he fell, like he was holding onto the tree just to keep himself from falling.
Yeah.
And when he did that, it was probably like maybe 3 seconds, 2-3 seconds he did that. And he jumped up and his eyes were kind of wide open. He looked at me and I looked at him. He walked over and picked his shoes up, put his socks on, never said anything.
Oh, wow.
And everybody's like, what just happened? I said, I don't know. I don't have a clue.
That's
I don't have a
crazy.
clue what happened. I'm not saying, I don't know how my cell phone works and I still use it. I know that he had some type of awakening, whether it was the tree, whether it was the energy in the soil, whether it was him connecting, whether it was his mind totally opening up and sincerely apologizing. Whatever all that was together, I saw a man get changed that day. And then several days later, he approached me and said, I want to apologize for my behavior on the hike. And I said, you don't need to apologize to me. I said, everything is for a reason. I said, I believe that your behavior was so that situation could happen and your eyes could be open to there's more out there than where you're at. And he says, I will never be the same. I never asked him what he thought. I never asked him what, happened. He didn't share and I didn't ask. So, that's a pretty wild story. One of the other stories it's pretty emotional for me is I knew a female client that she had been there for several weeks, went on a forest therapy walk with me. And then after the forest therapy walk, she acted like she wanted to talk. And I, hey, you all right? She goes, well, not really. She goes, I need somebody to talk to. And I said, well, I can get you a staff member to help you because, male, female, I didn't want to be alone
Yeah.
type situation.
Yeah.
You always got to be careful with those situations, right? So we started walking, and she said, the reason I went on this walk is because I have some really major decisions I have to make. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm okay. And then she just kept stumbling around. Because I could tell by the way she was going that I felt that it may be over my head.
Yeah.
Self-worth, security, your self-worth and your self-security comes in to
Mhm.
play. And that's exactly where I was. And I could clearly say she had a whole lot on her mind and I wasn't sure where it was headed.
Yeah.
But in our walk to where I was going to go to get another staff member, she shared with me that she found out when she got there that she was pregnant and she was considering an abortion.
Oh,
So
wow.
now, to keep all my personal opinions about that topic out of it, it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with me. My personal opinion has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the way I can help her.
Yeah.
And so I'm just listening. And she says, I went on this forest therapy walk. I was looking for clarity and I don't know what to do. And I'm just listening to her. And all of a sudden she just stops and starts crying and starts weeping. I mean, she was literally weeping. She couldn't catch her breath. And she
Oh, wow.
goes, I just got my answer. And I just smiled and I said, that's awesome. You have an answer. And she goes, I'd like to share it. And I said, well, it's yours. If you want to share, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she pointed to a tree that all the leaves are starting to fall off of. It was last fall, a year ago.
Yeah.
And she pointed to a tree that all the leaves are falling off. And there was an old bird's nest in the tree. And she
Mm.
goes, I've walked past this place many times and never saw that nest. And I said, okay. And she goes, it was put there for me. I need to be nesting. I need to be preparing for a child.
Oh,
And it
wow.
just, my heart just melted because there I was feeling overwhelmed, didn't know if I was going to be able to even help her. And it wasn't
Yeah.
for me to help her. I was just there being a guide, being supportive. Nature took care of it. The
That's crazy.
bird's nest took care of it. And she got her
Yeah.
answer that she was looking for. So how does those things happen? I don't know. You look like you're being distracted
A little bit. But
a little bit.
that's the fun part of having a podcast set up in
That's
your
the fun
bedroom, I
part of
guess.
having a podcast. You have a crew.
Yeah, apparently.
You're a tech.
No,
You're,
but that is
you're a tech person.
yeah, right. That's a cool story. It's cool that you get to like facilitate these encounters or interactions with people in nature and then kind of just step back and let it do its thing. It's not like, you're not like preaching to them or anything like that. Like the
Right.
burden is on you. You're just introducing them into their own journey of how it
And
works.
that is the greatness of my title. I am a forest therapy guide. I am not a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm a forest therapy guide. I guide
Guided.
you through the woods. The woods is your therapy. The forest is your therapy. I'm just the guide that's there to make sure you get in and out safely. That's it.
Yeah. It's cool. So the next question was more like, I haven't talked to you about this personally, but this is more like a professional question. Like, what do you envision for the future of forest therapy in the mental health field? Like, do you have any bigger plans? Could you see it growing into something
Yeah.
bigger than it is? Because
It's
it's a
I think we're going to be forced into it. If I can use the word forced into it, because
yeah,
people are looking for so many different ways to get healthy and they can't find it. So they're willing to try anything. And then when they try this, it's getting back to the basics. When we
yeah,
get back to the basics, they start to see success. So I predict, it won't be very long and doctors will be writing a script for go take a walk. You know,
yeah,
go find a forest therapy guide and go for a walk with a forest therapist. I mean, there's so many. when you hurt yourself and the doctor writes out for, you got to go see a physical therapist and
Yeah, same
exercise your
thing.
arm, physical
Yeah.
therapy. When you get into the mental side of it, you know, why can't your doctor? We just got to get the insurance companies on board because everything today is insurance. And if they can't be a dollar made,
Yeah.
I was told that the other day that, I'm not billable. And I just kind of laughed. I don't want to be billable. I want to just help
Yeah.
people. I don't
Yeah.
care if I make $1 on this or not. You know, uh, if you want to say, hey, you want to go on a forest therapy walk, what's it cost? And I'll say it's going to cost your time. Well,
Yeah.
when can we go? Well, if you can go when I'm going, it's free. If you
Yeah.
want me to change my plan and change my schedule to come meet you at your time, then I expect some compensation for my gas and whatnot.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
weekend, this weekend, Deb and I are going on a 32-mile hike. That'll be an awesome forest therapy walk. And
Yeah.
we have somebody going for the first time ever backpacking. And we got introduced to a
Cool.
guy that is an advocate backpacker, but we've never met him before. So we have somebody that we've never met.
Mm.
We got introduced.
Yeah.
There's a Pennsylvania backpackers. We put out there, hey, we're going to be on this trail this day. Does anybody want to go?
Yeah.
And we got a couple people that are going to go with us,
Cool.
and so that's kind of exciting that we're going to get to meet people we don't know. But those type of things, I'm going. You're more than
Yeah.
welcome to come along with me. There's no price. There's nothing I can charge for that because to see the success, when I see this person that's never backpacked before, and I
Yeah.
know the first day in, don't broadcast this until after she goes.
Yeah.
The first day in, when we're climbing up out of that canyon, and she's
Yeah.
going to hate me because the canyon up out of that canyon is steep. But day 2 and day 3, when it starts to settle in, and she's
Yeah.
living off of what she put in her pack, and she's going to find out how simple life can be. All that
Yeah.
other stuff is just extra. You're going to see the forest therapy kick in. You're going to see her say, I really don't need this. I don't need this. I don't see. She's going to find things that's in her backpack that she really don't need to survive. We go
Yeah.
back, you said earlier about our ancestors. What do you need? You need shelter if there's a storm coming.
Food and
You
water.
need
Yep.
food and water. What else do you need? They're
Mm-hmm.
wants.
Yeah. It's true.
So I see
So,
it growing into something very big. And I feel in the very near future, there's
yeah.
more and more. If
Cool.
you go online now, since I got my certification, there are all
Growing.
kinds.
Yeah.
I was the only one in 100 miles of me. And now you can find like 5 or 6. And if you go
Cool.
to a place that's a little bit more populated, you can find somebody that's going to meet your personality, and you're going to have a great time.
Cool. So, with that being said, how can more people be encouraged to explore forest therapy as a mental health resource? Like, is this something that you think people could ask their personal therapist about
I think you can
on the like
ask.
online platform?
Yeah, I think that I got introduced to it through my counselor. They're the one that introduced me to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be somebody that's open because no matter what topic we have, you're going to have 2 sides of the conversation, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that are saying I'm only holistic. There's going to be people that say I'm only, modern day medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
To find that balance is hard. So if you're seeing a counselor, you're seeing a physician that's all one direction, it's going to be hard to find to go into the other direction. So
Gotcha.
I would ask.
Definitely
And if
sounds
you're
worth
that
it.
person that's looking for an alternative, why aren't you trying everything? And when I say everything, I don't mean go try the hardest, narcotic out there you can find to numb yourself for the rest of your life. Find
Yeah.
something the easiest. Drink a glass of water. Some people don't
Yeah.
realize it. When we did 75 hard and I was
Yeah.
forced to drink a gallon a day, the benefits of drinking water is amazing.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I read an article one time that says if you took 100 people and told them if they drank 1 glass of water every day for the rest of their life, they would never die. Within the first week, you would lose over 75% of your study. And within a month, you'd have nobody, because nobody could believe that something as simple as a glass of water
Drinking water.
would keep you alive. But you don't know if you don't do it.
Yeah.
So try the simplest thing.
The whole dehydration thing is huge, but that's a whole
Oh
different
my.
subject. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
People make jokes because in the army, the medics always be like, take some ibuprofen and drink water. And so they're like, the water doesn't solve everything. But now that I'm in the civilian world, I'm like, whenever Jocelyn doesn't feel good, I'm like, were you drinking water? And most times the answer is no.
Right.
So I realize that water does play a huge, huge factor, especially
Yep.
if you're
Good
someone who's being
water.
physically fit. Yeah.
Good water. And in there, we talk about our mental and physical health. How many people are drinking stuff that's causing these situations?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe, we
Drink
struggle to
Rev
make our
40.
mental health healthy, but
Yeah.
maybe by something we're putting in our mouth or on our skin is causing some of these issues. Research that.
Yeah. I
Um,
literally read like yesterday that they've had a study come out that when you eat a lot of sugar or carbs, your glucose levels spike,
uh-huh,
right? And then obviously you come back down. But if you eat a lot, it crashes harder. And there was
right.
the study was essentially like if when you crash, you're more like on edge, like you're more
Yep.
irritable. And it's literally backing like people who eat unhealthy, or maybe
Right.
it's not always unhealthy. It's not bad to have a cupcake here and there, but eating like that is like actually tied to your mood and how you feel and how you'll react to people,
So
which is
something as
crazy.
simple as what you just said, a cupcake here and there it isn't bad for you. Well, I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, it's
if
bad for you
if
in the
you have
moment, I guess. Yeah.
if you have one of grandma's cupcakes
Okay.
that she
Yeah.
made in her
With
kitchen,
real sugar and
you
no
could probably have
fructose,
one
no
every day,
dyes.
and it's not going to
Yeah.
hurt you. I believe it's not the sugars and the actual product; it's the preservatives that are in those products. Um,
Yeah.
I tell a story at White Deer Run where most people are from either Pennsylvania or New York, and I'd say, realistically, somebody from Pennsylvania or New York should not even know what an orange is. Go
Yeah.
back 200
It's
years.
true. It's true.
They wouldn't know what oranges are. We know oranges because they've been marketed and they're sold to us because they're great in vitamin C. And I had a guy argue with me the other day that we'd all have scurvy if we didn't eat oranges. Well, do you know how many things have vitamin C in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
How about stinging nettle?
Yeah.
I always pick on people with stinging nettle. That's gross. I said, no, eat some stinging nettle in your salad. You steep it a little bit. It has more vitamin C in than an orange does. And people are like, you're crazy. Nettle tastes gross. An orange tastes good.
Yeah.
Well, there's the point. We
Yeah.
all want
Exactly.
those sugars. But
Mhm.
back to water, I was thinking so many people, drink water, drink water, drink water. But you got to be careful of the water you're drinking. You know, when
Yeah.
I
I've
was in
learned that.
school, I remember we were just talking about this the other day. In eighth grade, when I was in eighth grade, we had a list of things that were going to come to be true that nobody was going to believe are going to be true. And one of those was you're going to be able to buy things over the TV, which nobody ever thought
Yeah.
that'd be true. And the other thing I remember is people are going to pay for water. They're going to buy bottled water. Everybody says it's crazy. That'll never happen. Well, I challenge you to go to your local market and look to see how many different bottles of water there are, how many
Yeah.
companies there actually are. And
Apparently,
then
California has bottled water stores that are specifically only sell water,
only sell
different
water.
bottle, different bottled waters.
They're crazy. And then what I
And most,
challenge you to do is to find a uh, very resourceable,
mhm.
somebody that's a good resource, and
Yeah.
look to see what's in those bottles of water that are tested. Find out how many microplastics you're actually putting in your body. How
Yeah.
many
Some
other
of the
added
worst to me.
chemicals they're putting into the water to make it whatever, whatever, whatever. Drink the
Yeah.
water right out of your tap and run it through your home purifier. Simple.
Yeah. All right. We're getting close to the end, but this question is what would you say to someone, or what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with mental health when or is considering forced therapy, but we kind of already answered that one. But more so just broad spectrum closing question. Like, what would you suggest to someone who is
Call me.
struggling with mental health? Call you? Yeah. Right.
Call me. Have a
I think
conversation.
you covered a lot. You covered don't only look in one place, like try different things,
Try
see
different
different
things.
people. Like if you have a therapist that doesn't work well with you, probably like look around, don't just quit. You mentioned that. Um yeah. And the nature part, there's little
Everybody, my opinion, everybody needs therapy. Everybody. Whether
yeah.
it's laying on the couch, whether it's in the forest, whether it's your best friend in the garage, working on your favorite mechanical hobby, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you need therapy. I remember when I was going through the struggle and I was talking with um, my medical doctor,
Yeah.
and I was talking through before I was going to therapy, and he said to me, I'll never forget this. He says, when you're working on your car and the wrench slips and you bust your knuckle, what do you do? And I said, I usually say ouch and think about how dumb I am. He goes, do you ever throw the wrench? I said, never. I never throw the wrench. He goes, why not? And I said, because I'll probably break something and have to go pick it up. He goes,
Yeah.
you need to learn how to throw that wrench. You got to,
That's your
everybody
therapy.
needs some type of therapy. When you hurt your finger, you need to
Yeah.
vent. Okay, look around, make sure it's a safe place and have a place to throw your wrench, But
Yeah. That's for me, it's more
everybody
so like
needs
yeah.
some vent. And I use that word as therapy. You need
Yeah.
to have therapy, whether it's adrenaline junkies. You're
Yeah.
using that for a vent. They're therapy.
Yeah. Riding a motorcycle and working out is what I do.
Yeah, I see that with you. The
Yeah.
gym. Gym is your
Yeah.
therapy. You get stressed out,
Yeah.
go hit the weights.
I think it's kind of like relatable to forced therapy in a way where like a lot of people who don't work out don't understand how beneficial it is for your mental health.
So
Like
let's
once
get. Can
I've
we?
had buddies who start working out and they're like, dude, if I wasn't in the gym, I don't know where I'd be today. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
because it's like, it's not only cool and like to work on yourself and like if you're into like being muscular or whatever, but there's like physical like science that's going on in your body when you're doing these activities.
Right. So you said earlier about dopamine.
Yeah.
You're chasing that dopamine. How are you chasing it?
Yeah.
Drugs, alcohol, gym, forest therapy,
And all of that
walking,
stuff
hiking,
is like,
all that stuff. Everybody wants that good feeling. Everybody wants that feeling. Whether it's something as simple. I get extra when I mow my grass and all the lines are perfectly straight. I sit back and I just smile and say,
that's a dad thing to
wow,
say.
I like that yard. I like the way that yard looks. When you look at a ball field, they do those perfect checkers,
Yeah.
that gives me dopamine. I'm like, wow, somebody took so much time and care to get those lines perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody has something different. Find out what's good and what works for you.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like, so stuff like alcohol, drugs, and stuff is known as free dopamine,
Yep.
loosely term. But
Yep.
it's basically like, yeah, it's like you're not doing what you're like, normally you're supposed to do something and then receive the reward for it. And then those things create the whole like, oh, you get rewarded, but you haven't done anything. And there's a whole different subject of like what the up and down of it and stuff
Right.
because your body's receiving all this dopamine. And then when you come down off it, you're like, well, why am I so anxious or sad? And it's like, well, because you just, it's
That's
better
why.
to do things and actually be like after you do like even something basic, like a list of chores, it's like, oh, you accomplished those things. Like
Mhm.
that is the dopamine release or a good grade on a test. Like that is what's supposed to happen. But then if you get involved in things
Right.
that create free dopamine, when you take the test and you get a good grade, now it's not such of a big deal because you don't have that natural tolerance kind of. That makes sense.
Right. That's why I
That's a
think a
whole
lot of
different
people,
subject
including
for a whole
myself,
different episode.
yeah, that's why I think a lot of people, including myself, you when you have a chore list for the day, you actually make a physical list. I mean, not in your mind, you make a physical written down list
And see the
because you want to
checks.
cross them off, put a check, that awesome feeling to like, oh, I crossed that one off. And then
Yeah.
you could actually be somebody like me that gets sidetracked, your attention deficit kicks in there. You get
Yeah.
sidetracked and you do something that's not on your list. But when you go to check something else off, you write the thing down that you did in between there, just so you can put a line
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah. That's cool. So is there anything else you wanted to say about forest therapy in closing?
I just encourage people get back to the basics, get out in nature any way possible. Reach out to me. I know this road that I'm on right now, this venture that I'm on, has opened up so many avenues. Um, Run in the Forest is what I go by on social media.
There you go.
I believe in it so much. I have it on my vehicle. I drive down the road and it says "Run in the Forest" right on the side of my truck. Because this isn't something I just do for a couple hours. It's something I live and breathe. Um, People can be talking to me at a dinner table and it comes up. I can wake up in the morning at a campsite and it's what we're talking about. It's all I talk
Yeah.
about because I believe in it so much. And it doesn't actually have to, when you put forest therapy, somebody thinks of it as therapy. It's not really, don't put that stigma to it that it has to be, oh, I'm laying down on the couch. You're going out and getting yourself back into nature and you're
Yeah.
getting away from the things that cause you chaos. I challenge you to try this. Sit by a tree for an hour, sit on social media for an hour. How do you feel
Yeah.
when the hour's over? Right? It's
Yeah.
nothing to scroll and see somebody did something that really runs you crazy, right? You can sit there with that
Yeah.
tree all day long.
Unbothered.
You're gonna
Yeah.
come out smiling. I guarantee it. So
All
I
right.
encourage you, research forest therapy, look for a forest therapy guide. If you want to follow me. I'm all over East Coast. We travel up and down the East Coast, um, overlanding and hiking. Um, Hoping to get more and more into the next year. But reach out to me. I'd be more than glad to meet up with somebody and take them for a walk in the woods or and here's something down there where you're at. There's
Yeah.
there's something very rewarding for walking barefoot on a beach.
On the beach. Yeah.
Early morning, late at night. Don't think forest therapy. You actually need trees. We'll call it nature therapy.
Nature.
Um,
Yeah.
Call it nature therapy. Get back out to nature. Let the salt water hit your toes. And um, there's just, there's not words. You got to experience it for yourself. Get
Yeah.
out and do it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us. I think this will make
Thank
for
you
a
for the
good
invite.
episode. Good first episode. So
Yep.
for everyone else, going from here, make sure to check out the You Need You podcast. It's You Need You podcast on Instagram. That is where I'm going to be posting a lot of my updates. And I also am posting just content, like psychological content, stuff that I learned in class, stuff that I am learning, studying, interesting things. Like I've posted like what Google says about dogs impact on people, stuff like that. So if you're interested, check that out. And please, if you're checking out this YouTube channel, nothing helps us more than subscribing and liking the video. This is a brand new channel, so it's going to take a while to build it. So thank you guys so much. Thanks, Ron, Dad, for
Yep.
joining us.
Thank you for
And
the
I
invite.
appreciate it. Yep. See you guys next episode.
Yep. Get out in the woods.